All right, this is the first part A of the Khoodeelaar campaign, world exclusive diagnosis of Fleet Street. In other words, the newspapers published from London. And this is the magazine contained with the Times of today. And that cover is, of course, dedicated to a picture of Rebecca Vardy. And we shall be talking about Rebecca Vardy a little bit later. This is the Times, the main kind of newspaper. And it's talking about the police starting the crackdown on COVID rule breakers. Oh, that's a lie. Because the COVID rules were broken by the father and others close to Boris Johnson who have not been prosecuted. And of course, the most notorious rule breaker was Dominic Cummings, who was not only not prosecuted by the police, but was allowed to behave like the real prime minister when he held a press conference behind the front charge of the Downing Street and asserted that he was above the law. And he lied, and the Times and others failed to hold him to account. So this is an untruthful headline or heading in the Times. And the rest of the Times, of course, contains similar untruths, untruthful headings, and untruthful kind of claims. Now, this is typical of the untruthfulness of the Times and the rest of Fleet Street. It says, don't send children to school if you can help it. Plead heads. Now, we have said on the facts, not because we have no alternative words or phrases to use, but this is a typical, contradictory, lying behavior and contents, and the role and narrative on the parts of the various dailies that together constitute the so-called Fleet Street. So what we have got is the Times and the scum that is the Sun, which is owned, both of these are owned by Rupert Murdoch. And there is a direct accusation on page 6 of the Times, which is based on an assertion that I haven't seen the like of before, which is that Alex Salmond, the SNP's former leader and the SNP First Minister of Scotland, has accused Nicola Sturgeon, the current leader and the current First Minister, of having lied in the case of sexual assaults that were brought against Alex Salmond. And he was declared innocent, or he was declared acquitted. Now that is something that we shall talk about more in due course. But here on this one, and before I read this, I suggested it's extraordinary, which is what the Times copy is saying. Here it is. Kieran Andrews, Scottish political editor, of the times. Now, Alex Salmond has made an extraordinary personal attack on Nicola Sturgeon, calling her testimony to the inquiry into sexual assault claims made against him simply untrue. The former First Minister said Ms. Sturgeon misled Parliament and broke the ministerial code, which, if he is proven to be correct, would almost certainly spell the end of her political career. Mr. Salmon said that the breaches included a failure to inform the civil service in good time of her meetings with him and allowing the Scottish government to contest a civil court case against him, despite having had legal advice that it was likely to collapse. The allegations against Miss Sturgeon, who replaced Mr. Salmond as First Minister and leader of the SNP after the 2014 independence referendum, show how sour relations between the two most influential figures in the SNP have become. The ministerial code says that any meetings about government business should be recorded and that ministers must ensure the government complies with the law. A minister found to have knowingly misled Holyrood will be expected to offer their resignation. Now, this is the reason why I have read as much as I have of this piece, is to cite this as a contrast to the evidence that Boris Johnson-fronted cabal breaks the code every single time. It's not occasionally, it's every single time. And this Times newspaper, which is running this particular copy about Nicola Sturgeon, covers up Boris Johnson's lying and lies. And the rest of the Fleet Street papers are the same. And before going any further, let's say that the rest of the Fleet Street papers, which include The Guardian, which for a long time has been kind of passed as a liberal, so-called, within L, small l, liberal newspaper and not a right-wing conservative paper, has, under the current control of Catherine Weiner, who is the so-called editor, increasingly, openly, like the Daily Mail and the Sun and the Express, in promoting Boris Johnson and is covering up for him. So the long-standing description of newspapers reports being called press coverage, that is to say, press reporting of an event or of a situation. In the current kind of circumstances and on the evidence of the last many years, it can be safely, that is accurately, substantially said that The Guardian has become the most effective organ for covering up the lies of the government and the state in Britain. And so therefore, by extension, the rest of Fleet Street can be said to be covering up, and the press reporting can be called cover-up, press cover-ups, not coverage, but cover-ups. This is something, again, we have just coined. This is the Khoodeelaar campaign, world exclusive diagnosis of Fleet Street. And this is the product and result of our world exclusive diagnosis today. And there is this two-page spread of a headline, pages 8 and 9, which says millions more may get the virus, the COVID-19. Amid fear, cases won't fall until spring. Now, this is the same cover-up, because they are not saying in the content of the copy to which this headline is attached why millions more will be getting infected. That is to say, none of the papers, there are literally thousands of pages altogether that make up the papers today, this Saturday, the 9th of January 2021. Thousands of pages of the newspapers today, which 10 of them cost £19.35, I think, or 95 pence. Should check again. And they have not got the information as to what the virus is doing. So it's a cover-up. Thousands of pages of newspapers are covering up the truth and creating what the Daily Mail Online has said, a scare by the Johnson-fronted cabal. The Daily Mail is saying so the Daily Mail today is saying, let's get to that particular one to get it exactly. Check if we have this in the print version of the Daily Mail. Because online, what is called the Daily Mail Online or the Mail Online, they have said that Boris Johnson is trying to scare people into lockdown 3. That's what he said. Well, according to the that's what it says in the item online. And even the Daily Mail is saying that it's not here on the printed edition. So it's only on the Mail Online, and probably they will repeat that kind of line on Sunday, Mail on Sunday. They're saying that Boris Johnson is trying to scare people in Britain into accepting stricter lockdown and controls on movements. And they're using the term Tier 3. Now, that is not the case, because Tier 3 is all over the place. They actually mean Tier 4 or Tier 5. And they're saying, so that is a contradiction, because in the printed edition they're covering up. They're actually covering up, and they're giving Boris Johnson a positive credit, which is exactly the line and the narrative that they have been running all throughout. In fact, Johnson has been constructed as a politician by the Daily Mail, the Sun, the Times, and the Boris Club, of course, and the Express. Over the entirety of his political career, Johnson has been repeatedly lying And yet he has been repeatedly allowed to pretend to be, and has been given credit for being, quote, the winner or a winner, as the creepy associate political editor of the BBC, Norman Smith, has disgracefully, outrageously, shamelessly promoted Boris Johnson for the best part of 18 months. The best part of 18 months in the lead up to the 12th of December 2019 general election that Boris Johnson was handed the privilege and the opportunity to hold and to actually capture and win, so-called, by the intellectually demanding, intellectually challenged and politically stupid Jeremy Corbyn. We say that because according to the Cameron legislation, the Labour Party supported for the fixed-term parliament, 5-year fixed-term parliament, an election in Britain, general election, was not going to be due for another few years. And Johnson could not hold the election of the 12th of December 2019 if opposition MPs united against that abuse and illegality, unconstitutionality. So Norman Smith, whom we abbreviate to APE, A-P-E, APE, Associate Political Editor, was the only one anywhere in the mainstream, in BBC or Sky News or Fleet Street, anywhere in British mainstream so-called media, to repeatedly perpetrate the praise for Johnson as the winner. And the liar promoted Boris Johnson as the winner or as a winner by falsely, untruthfully, and corruptly distorting Johnson's record in the post of elected mayor at the expense of London. Not only that, he also gave Johnson credit for beating the previous incumbent, Ken Lying Still Livingston, at the first attempt, which is 2008. Now, Johnson wasn't a winner or the winner. If Fleet Street told the truth about him, he would never win anything. And even after thousands and thousands of people dying due to the negligence of the Johnson-fronted cabal, pretending to be the government of this country, Fleet Street is still shielding him. And part of the shielding is evident in the Murdoch scum, which is not anywhere near talking about the virus and the danger and the rising numbers of people dying. It's talking about Barbara Windsor, a tribute to Barbara Windsor. I mean, that tribute could be left on the inside 2 pages. That is too much. Too much news space given to Barbara Windsor rather than on the truth about how Brexit has been exposed as having lost so much in the last 1 week. for ordinary people, and it is going to cost a lot more every single day, coming day. The Daily Mail, of course, is running the item about Martin Bashir. And for the first time in 23 years since she was murdered, the Daily Mail, which actually denies that Diana was murdered, but the maximum numbers of people who have thought about the various things involved in the 1987 staged car crash believed that she was murdered, as was the son of Al Fayed, Dodi Fayed, who was traveling with her in the French capital. And for the first time in 23 years, the Daily Mail has decided to interview Hasnat Khan, the heart surgeon who was Diana's lover. And they never gave him any space except indirectly report about his dignified silence about Diana all those years. But this is the first time they're talking about an interview with him, exclusive interview with Diana's lover, who they say savages Martin Bashir. And there are pictures of Diana and him on the front page of the Daily Mail. Now, on the inside, there are two pages. On the pages 4 and 5, they are running this heading: Hasnat wields the knife, that is the knife at Martin Bashir. And they're saying about Hasnat Khan, he was Diana's lover as she filmed her secret panorama interview. Now, inflamed by the unfolding scandal, heart surgeon Hasnat Khan gives his first interview in 12 years, and it is devastating. So how much longer can the BBC stand by Bashir? And this is a piece by Richard K., editor at large, pictured here with Khan. I'm not going to read the full piece, but the point is that this is the piece that they're saying that he has given the first interview in 12 years. But actually, the Daily Mail really is running, this is the first time in 23 years, because whatever they say about 12 years ago never was as prominent as this one they're running. And Hasnat Khan has always been reportedly reluctant to speak about Diana to any journalist or in public. So this one is, I'm absolutely certain, part of the Daily Mail's plot to involve Hasnat Khan as part of their agenda against Martin Bashir and the BBC. Now, I'm not saying nor suggesting that either Martin Bashir or the BBC deserves to be defended. No way. What I am saying is that they would not give the same kind of importance to actual stories, truthful stories about the BBC lying and BBC's employees or staff or contractors lying. As I said, in the last 10 days, that 3 BBC employees, one is called Patrick Young, the Young is spelled Younge, who is a brother of Gary Young, who is known for his appearances on The Guardian, initially, Gary, Garry Young. Patrick Young is a practiced crook and a liar and a thief. And he stole an interview that he recorded with me in the name of the BBC in September 1993, shortly after I launched the campaign against the racist attack on the boy that had been attacked in the first fortnight of 1993, September 1993. So Patrick Young stole the interview and staged a bogus interview simulation based on my work and broadcast that one. That was breach of contracts, theft, and everything else. That is one of the claims, outstanding claims against the BBC. And there was another boy, a Bengali origin boy from West Bengal, who came and stole an interview with me when I was campaigning against the negligence of the London Ambulance Service, causing the death of the 11-year-old child Nasima Begum in 1994. And a Pakistani female, or Pakistani-born young female working for the BBC at the time, not of that one, but another campaign I was doing, simultaneously perhaps, and she came and interviewed me in the street in New Road. And she stole that interview, and she completely fabricated the whole thing and gave somebody else the credit for the work that I had done. Now, these are not hearsay. These are not some kind of third party, fourth party, whatever, indirect thing. These are direct claims and evidence and allegations against the BBC. So therefore, I'm not defending and cannot defend and will not defend the lies of the BBC. But what I'm saying is in diagnosing the reason why the Daily Mail is running the particular line against Bashir and against the BBC is a part of the agenda of the Daily Mail and of Rupert Murdoch and of Boris Kraft against the BBC. It's like the idea of a public service broadcaster is what they are attacking to undermine and aiming to undermine. And the fact that I'm saying this today is also very near the date when the Boris Johnson cabal has appointed another Tory right-winger as the chairman of the BBC. And this is one of the manifesto secrets that they were allowed to hide in a vague kind of document that was kind of passed as a manifesto for the 12th of December 2019 general election, so-called. So one of the things that they are doing as part of that manifesto, secret manifesto, is to undermine the BBC and destroy the BBC. And I've come to the similarity between the attack on the BBC by the right-wing papers and the agenda, the so-called manifesto commitment by the Boris Johnson-fronted conservative cabal against the BBC, which is a public service broadcast organization. That's the idea. As against the NHS, public sector health service, at the point of actual need, which they have been, despite the fact that currently in the slogan that they are promoting the idea that they support the NHS, they're saying they save the NHS or protect the NHS as part of the slogan. But essentially, their agenda is to undermine the NHS and to destroy the NHS, which is what they have been intent on doing for 70 plus years since the NHS was theoretically launched. So what the Daily Mail today is doing with Hasnat Khan being kind of brought back from retirement is aiding their agenda against the BBC as the public sector organization, public sector kind of broadcaster. Now, despite the fact that the left wing, the so-called socialists, claim to be supporters of public sector institutions and agencies, the reason why, to most people, day-to-day experience of encounters with the public sector, including the most notorious local public sector, is of course the local council. The experience of ordinary people day-to-day with public sector agencies and institutions compels the people to condemn these public sector outfits. And a random look at the limited kind of space given to so-called readers by the Archant-owned Newham Recorder, for example, online, confirms this. Limited because they don't allow comments, critical comments against the Newham Council to be published online after our campaign ran about 18 months or so long campaign, adding comments online to pieces about Newham Council. And they colluded, the Newham Recorder decided to collude and be complicit with the Newham Council regime fronted by Roxana Fiaz, the so-called elected mayor in post. And so therefore the Newham Recorder has stopped allowing comments coming from the websites that we have used. But the essential fact is that those who are given space are more than 95% of the times openly abusive of Newham Council as corrupt, crooked. But because of their racism, they also attack Roxana Fiaz's Pakistani origin. She is not from Pakistan. She is of Pakistani descent. Her parents are from Pakistan, but she was herself born in the Myland Hospital, which is situated in Tower Hamlets. But she grew up in Newham most of the times because of her parents' family, home being in Newham. So those who condemn Newham Council's corruption undermine their condemnation by coming across as racists, because what the corrupt Newham Council is representing is not Roxana Fiaz's Pakistani origin. That is a very significant, important point to make. It is the fact that Newham Council is corrupt, that it is not democratic, that there is no accountability, there is no transparency, there is no audit. And that applies to the Labour Party, which she belongs to, and which is responsible for all the elected posts in Newham Council are held by Labour Party members. So there is nothing in the Labour Party, either locally or regionally or centrally, that holds the Labour Party card-carrying persons holding positions or seeking positions of elected councillor or elected mayor to account. And in fact, the Labour Party is antithetic to democracy, democratic accountability, has been all the time. And the fact that it was Tony Blair who introduced the particular legislation enabling people in the boroughs to choose, have an option as a referendum, whether to have an elected mayor or to keep the existing leader-led councils. So the Tories, being undemocratic, had no problem in supporting that. And the Labour Party, which contains so-called left-wing socialists and democratic kind of campaigners, is the one that facilitated the destruction of the fragile level of democracy in the local areas. And so we have just under 16, I think, elected mayors across England now that have been filled. The posts have been filled since 2000 when the 1999 Act making it possible to have elected mayors came into force in 2000. So the elected mayor in Newham is being attacked for the wrong reasons or being attacked in the wrong language. Thus, the attack is being lost from the actual focus. So therefore, we have no elected democracy any part of the country. And Newham and Tower Hamlets and Lewisham and Hackney are 4 London boroughs that have the corrupt post. And the Croydon Borough Council, which is now on the record as having gone bankrupt after falling into debt in excess of £1 billion. Now, despite this, there has been no outcry in the Fleet Street papers about Croydon's bankruptcy and Croydon's corruption. And it is very significant because the amount of venom that Fleet Street directed at Jeremy Corbyn was directed because Corbyn never wasted a single penny in his alleged anti-Semitic kind of tolerance of regime. So if the Fleet Street papers could find any evidence against Corbyn of wasting public money like Croydon has done, they would have wanted him to be sent to jail forever for the rest of his life or worse. So this is diagnostically another finding by us that the Fleet Street papers are not talking about corruption in Newham or in Tower Hamlets or in Hackney or in Lewisham, the 4 London boroughs that have the incumbent so-called elected mayor in post, or about Sadiq Khan's unfitness for being mayor, because Sadiq Khan is a mediocre opportunist careerist solicitor. He has not got the intellect or the vision or the understanding or the prospect for the people of London. So he's there as the kind of default incumbent, because the Conservatives have not got anything like a matching candidate to replace Sadiq Khan. So that being the default occupant makes it worse for the people of London and for the environment of London and for the safety of London than it would be the case, which would be bad enough itself, if he were an active, campaigning, conscientious, intellectually, morally, democratically fit occupant in that post. So Fleet Street's main kind of propulsion against Sadiq Khan comes when the Conservative Party wants Fleet Street to attack Sadiq Khan for petty reasons, which is not good enough in a democracy, and which most certainly is not good enough in the context of the COVID-19 and the violations of rights of the people across London. And Sadiq Khan is a complicit stooge, an agent of big business forces, as is shown in the approval Khan has given to the Bishopsgate goods yard, and the approval he has given for the go-ahead of the Silvertown Tunnel in Newham. So Sadiq Khan has not delivered anything that the so-called left claim to support, and they have not been campaigning. The left and the right of the Labour Party campaigned for Sadiq Khan's election in 2016. There was no ideological objection to the candidacy of Sadiq Khan on the ballot box as candidate for the Labour Party. And since becoming mayor, Sadiq Khan has appointed to his various kind of aides and staff dozens of people, if not hundreds of people, that are racist, intellectually challenged, and not committed to delivering anything like the quality of governance in the name of the London region to the people of London. Every aspect of Sadiq Khan's being mayor, every discipline, every kind of department is below 30% of the need that has to be met, but it cannot be met, will never be met by either Sadiq Khan or anyone else with his kind of shortcomings and unfitness. And the irony is that when compared to the corrupt cabal fronted by Boris Johnson, Sadiq Khan actually comes across as being not that bad at all, which is bad enough, which is not good enough, which is bad enough for democracy and for public health and for the environment and all the other things that are important issues for the health, the welfare, the rights, and the democracy of the people of London. And so when the Conservatives were delivering attacks on the basic institutions of democracy and accountability that were work in progress and still are were in progress, but at the time when they were attacking those, when they were last in power for 13 years during Margaret Thatcher and John Major, the Labour Party failed. The Labour Party failed to hold them to account, to point out what damage they were doing. And we shall be talking, of course, more at length about all of those in due course. Now, today, one of the items in the news, so-called, is that Robert Jenrick, the so-called housing minister with the corrupt cabinet minister, at the expense of housing and the communities, in the corrupt cabinet, fronted by the corrupt Boris Johnson. I mean, this is too much. All these people are corrupt and intellectually challenging. And we shall be talking about the intellectual level in the context of Shashi Tharoor's book that we are beginning to comment on extensively. Shashi Tharoor is an Indian equivalent of a British parliamentary member, MP, and he is from the southern Indian constituency. He is a Conservative Party member, that is to say the Congress Party member. And the Congress Party was the party with longest numbers of years in power. So during the last reign, Shashi Tharoor was appointed as UN representative for India. So he was one of the deputies or assistant secretary generals of the United Nations. But his contributions as in that post are not as significant as the contributions he has been trying to make since starting to write about the British Empire in the subcontinent. And the most noted piece that he is writing has been, in terms of the media reception, has been his charge. The Winston Churchill caused the massacre genocide of the Bengalis in the 1940s by switching resources away from the still British occupied subcontinent to Europe. So we shall be talking about Shashi Tharoor's actual allegations and the reason. We shall explore the reason why it has been only Shashi Tharoor that we can remember, we can note, we can find, and no other commentator or politician or activist thinker from any of the three countries, India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. And we shall be talking about that also in relation to the Indian corrupt kind of state, the central state and the local states, and the Indian police corruption and the judiciary, the legal system and the corruption. We shall be talking about all of those in due course.